Okay, good morning. Dr. Gemara, we are on the top of Zion Amud Aleph Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yosi. Bach points out, obviously, we're talking about Rabbi Yosi ben Zimmer, we're talking about an Amur named Rabbi Yosi, not the Tana. Rabbi Yochanan lived after the period of the Tana. He would not have been able to learn Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yosi, Minayin Shakadosh Baruch Hu Mistabal. How do you know that the Rebbeinu Shalom davens? Shneimar, the pasuk tells us, the Prophet doesn't say that they're going to come to my holy mountain, my house to the house of prayer. They're going to come to my house of prayer, in the sense that the Kanasha Kodesh Baruch Hu Mispal Hashem davens as well. Now, this to go along with the fact that we've already said on Vavim and Aleph on the bottom. Remember, we already said that the Rebbeinu Shalom wears tefillin. We learned out of Avin Bar Avad, said the name of Yitzchak Menashe Kodesh Baruch Meniach Tefillin. If you look here on the bottom, Zayin Amud Aleph, we're going to have later on today. We're going to say Rav Chana Bar Bizna, Rav Shimon Chasidim, Lam Shahara Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe Keshesh Tefillin, that the Rebbeinu Shalom wears tefillin. This makes sense. If you say the Rebbeinu Shalom is wearing tefillin, he's also davening. I actually find it fascinating. If you look in the Gemara Shoshana on your Zayin Amud Beis tells us that Rabbi Yochanan is the one who learns out from the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Vayabar Hashem al pana vayikra." We say it by the slichus, that we learn out from there that Melamesh and Isate Hakadosh Baruch Hu Kishlech Tzibur, that Hashem dressed up like a chazan, and he taught Moshe Rabbeinu the Yud Gimel Midos. The same Rabbi Yochanan. As over here, Rabbi Yochanan is saying that you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu davens. So why then I need another proof? If we already said that the Rebbeinu Shalom is Masata B'Shir Tzibur, taught Moshe Rabbeinu on the Yud Gimel Midos, then what I have to tell you now that another ride from Rabbi Yisrael HaKochi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu also davens? I think the answer probably is that there's a difference between davening on a daily basis and the Shliach Tzibur saying the Yud Gimel Midos, which at least for some is certainly not on a daily basis. Perhaps that's the distinction. I should also point out that this is not my vort. It happens to be, when I thought of this, I looked this morning, and it's not on this page, but on the next page, in Zion Beis, at least in my Gemara, the Rabbeinu Chananel, Hemshech Rabbeinu Chananel, Rabbeinu Chananel brings out this Gemara Shoshana. So the big source to think of the same connection as Rabbeinu Chananel did. Yeah, okay, continues the Gemara. The Gemara says, "My matzli." What does the Rebbeinu Shalom daven? What does the Rebbeinu Shalom say? Amar Mar Zutra. Yeah, we're on the top of Zion Amud Aleph, 4 lines down. My matzli. Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia. Amar Rav. This is what the Rebbeinu Shalom says. Yiratzim lefanai sheich b'shirach ma'es kasa. The Rebbeinu Shalom says that it should be my will that my rachamim should overcome my kas. And my rachamim should be the one that trumps over my midas. And I should be treating my children with midas rachamim, and I should do with them lifnim mishuras hadin. So that is to say that the Rebbeinu Shalom is, as it were, davening to himself, that he himself should answer, that his midas of chesed and rachamim should trump over his midas of kas. Again, this is impossible to understand in a literal way. The Rebbeinu Shalom davening, as it were, to himself, answering himself. What does it all mean? But what we do get out from this is the idea that the Rebbeinu Shalom in the next Gemara appreciates not only sort of the world as a perfect world, but a world that becomes more perfect. Look at the next line of the Gemara. It became a famous song. Tana Amar Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, Pamachas nechnasti l'haktir g'teres l'fnai v'lefnim. Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha was the Kohen Gadol. Said, I once went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim to do Keteres. Remember that during the second Beis Hamikdash, even though there was no more Aaron, there was no more special nace of the Kruvim, etc., they still had in the Kodesh HaKadoshim they had an Evishncia, they had something there, and they would still do the Ma'aseh, they would still do the Zrika Saddam, they would still do the things, even though there wasn't an actual Aron and Kruvim and there anymore. Nevertheless, says Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Elisha, when he went inside, again, what does that mean? We don't know. Different opinions. Some say that means Mamash Hashem. Then how does he see him? Again, what does that even mean? Some say it means an angel. Again, what does that mean? He's sitting on the heavenly throne. He says to me, bless me. Yishmael, my son, bless me. Again, how does this even possible that the Rebbe was looking for a blessing from a human being? But he doesn't say no. He says, okay, the same bracha. So instead of what we had before, which is Hashem saying it as a word, this becomes Hashem's tefillah. We now adapt it, and we, as it were, are giving a blessing to the Rebbe Shalom with every qualification. That we're saying that the Rebbe Shalom, your rachamim, should be kavish over your kas, and your racham should go and be trumping over all your other midas. This is naigin v'necha midas rachamim. You should treat your children with rachamim, and that you should go and act with them with not according to the letter of the law, but going even beyond the letter of the law. And as it were, he nodded to me. We learn out from this, you shouldn't take the bracha of a regular person as being something that is not that serious. You should take it seriously. So a number of things to say. Again, with every qualification, we have no idea what this Gemara means. How could Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha be blessing the Rebbeinu Shalom? Very, very hard to put it into words, and the words that we would have to put it into are certainly not sufficient now to discuss. So instead, what I would like to discuss is a couple of other points on this Gemara. Number one, the Gemara tells us that in Gemara in Rosh Hashanah on Yud Zayin, actually, not Yud Zayin on Beis, we just discussed that Gemara about Hashem is Nesatif Kishlech Tzibor. Now I'm turning backwards on Yud Zayin Amar Aleph. The Gemara there says unbelievable Gemara. The Gemara says that Kol Amar Midesov, whoever is going to be nice to decent to people, he's not going to treat them just the way they deserve to be treated, but he's going to treat them better, in a better way than they treated him. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be Maver Kol Pshav. Hashem is going to also be Maver Ambidaisa for this person. The things that he did wrong, Hashem is going to also treat him nicely. And it's very interesting to me that the Gemara says in Bamitzi on Lamna Beis, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan says that what was the reason for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? Second bias. Rabbi Yochanan says because they were done on Din Torah. So the Gemara says, what's wrong with being done on Din Torah? The Gemara says because they were not they didn't do Lifnim Meshuras Hadin. So now look at our Gemara again. We daven the Rebbeinu Shalom should act with us as Lifnim Meshuras Hadin. And we learn from the Gemara Shoshana that how he's supposed to treat other people. You're supposed to be Ma'av Midaisa. You're supposed to do as much as you can Lifnim Meshuras Hadin. And if you do that, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do that with you. But if we don't do that with other people, if we're not acting Lifnim Meshuras Hadin, then Chas Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't act with us Lifnim Meshuras Hadin. And says Rabbi Yochanan, that is in fact what caused the destruction of the second bias, because they were done Din Torah and they were not done Lifnim Meshuras Hadin. Okay, continues the Gemara. I should just mention one more thing maybe before we go. Is that the Gemara says a lesson is Shaloi Tehei Kala Birchas Hedi Kala Beinacha. That happens to be also Gemara Megillah Tezvav. And the Gemara over there says that we see this from two examples from David and Daniel. David got a bracha from Arvina and Daniel got a bracha from Tayavesh. And it came true. The brachas, the Gemara says the same thing over there. Don't take the brachas Hedi Kala Beinacha. It's a serious thing, a bracha from somebody. I don't want to, we don't have time. Brachas are fundamental. It's the first thing that God tells the humanity, right? In Brachos, go to Parashas Brachos, reprove him, it's the first thing that happens is bracha. I can't get into any more, but that is a fundamental detail of life itself. Is bracha, the idea of increasing. Again, as I alluded to it before, the idea of being perfect and becoming more perfect is something that's clearly in this Gemara, and we can't elaborate anymore. But one thing we do see here, which is to me a very fascinating thing. There's and we get our vart for the parsha here also. We get our vart for the parsha here also, right? Parsha started this week, yes. So we get our vart for the parsha. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Tefillah, the Rambam talks about the halachas of Berachos Kohanim. So the Rambam writes that all the times that a kohen is relevant for you, you have to know when is a kohen not kosher to duchen, right? If you killed somebody, then you're not kosher to duchen, right? But the Rambam says if somebody didn't do any of those kinds of affairs, even if he's not a great guy, he's still a duchen. And the Ram says, and don't ask how could a kohen duchen because how could a kohen duchen is just a nobody. He's not a special person, and should take his bracha seriously. And what do you expect the Rambam to answer? You expect the Rambam to answer, but he doesn't. The Rambam actually answers on the basis of Yerushalmi and Gittin, where basically the Gemara says that no, a kohen doesn't really bless the people. Who blesses the people? Right after Yivarecha, right there in Parshas Nosai, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I am blessing them. The kohen is just a conduit, but the Rebbeinu Shalom is really doing the blessing. So what's the answer to the question of why you have a person who's a kohen, not such a special guy, to be blessing? Shouldn't we answer? No, we don't answer that. Instead, what we say is that the reason that you have the kohen blessed, even though he's not such a special guy, is because he's not really doing the blessing. Hashem's doing the blessing. So I ask you, I don't understand. Why didn't the Rambam answer this? I understand he has a Yerushalmi and Gittin, but why didn't he bring down our Gemara Megillah? So I saw this question asked by the Meiser Kech, and he goes through a whole arichas over there, and he answers. In the end, I think what he's basically answering is that maybe the chiluk is the difference between a regilus in the thing versus a one-time thing. A one-time thing, bless you, to have a kohen bless the people, he's a hedge. Okay, it's fine. But to have it every single day, to say Shloitei Berachas Hedji Kala Benecha every day, okay, we need a better answer than that. One-off thing, okay, but every single day that I can't remember, not the Ashkenazim, we are mavatal the mitzvah esiv Berachas Kohanim. That's a separate topic, but and normally people benching every single day. So every single day you want to have a better answer. That's my understanding of what he wants to get. But it comes out interesting because we have a pasuk in this week's parsha, right, where Rivka meets up, right, with Eliezer and Avram, and she's now going back home with them, right, and she's going to go marry Yitzchak. But along the way, there's a whole back and forth in this parsha, right, with what happened in the story and then the rendition of the story. A whole long arichos. And at the end of it all, what happens? The family says to her, maybe she should wait a little longer. So she says, no, don't hold me back, right? Don't hold me back. Let me go. So they let him go. And on the way out, they bless her. They say that Rivka, you should be a great nation. You should have lots of children. Says the Medrash, appears in Bereshit, Yaakshua, other places. The Medrash says, you know why Rivka was an Akara? In other words, we have the Gemara in Yevam Sam. We have about the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him to be, barren, so that he should hear the tefillas. Fine. This is a different approach. You know why Rivka was barren? Says the Medrash, because so that it shouldn't be that the Goyim are going to take credit and say that they're the reason that Rivka had a whole big nation. That it's from them because they said, So you hear the difference. Why don't you just say Birchas Hedjit Kala Beinacha? What's the problem? What's wrong? We do take a Birchas Hedjit seriously. So I think the answer to this could be, I'm not saying it for sure, I didn't see anybody say it, but I wonder if the answer is the difference between the truth of, from your perspective as the makabel of the bracha versus the Nisan bracha. In other words, from your perspective as the makabel of the bracha, you shouldn't take a Birchas Hedjit unseriously. If Rivka heard the bracha, she should take the bracha seriously, even if it came from like Lavan. Still take it seriously because it could still have a big impact. But from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective of allowing the people who gave the bracha to take credit for themselves, even though they're hedyatis, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes has to step in and stop things. Right? In this case, to make Rivka barren, so that the family shouldn't have taken credit for the fact that she had a great nation that did in fact come after her. Okay? All right, moving on. Continues the Gemara. We're in the second of the wide lines. How do you know that you're not supposed to be meratz a person in the time of his anger? The Ram brings this down in Hilchos Deis. as part of a whole slew of things. The Ram brings down, like you shouldn't. If a guy has his mace in front of him, they haven't buried him. Like don't be menachem over yet. You know what I mean? Like wait till the mace is buried until he gets to his house. Right? If somebody's in a moment where he's in a rage and he's making a neder, don't like try to calm. Give a guy a moment. Yeah. So Menayin Shem Ratzon Le'Lodim Shas Kaisa Desif Pana Yelechu V'Ani Chaysi Loch, because the pasuk tells us that Rebbeinu Shalom is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, as it were, Pana Yelechu, again, whatever that anthropomorphism means, and then we'll make it for you. So what happened? Remember, this is the time of the Egel. The Jewish people had sinned. Moshe Rabbeinu is asking for Rachamim. So I'm like, Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe, Hamten li ad sheyavu panim shel zam v'aniach lecha. Wait till my face of anger, again, with every qualification, whatever that means, until that goes. V'aniach lecha, and then I'm going to be able to give in to you. Umi says, right the Gemara. Umi ika. Umi ika riska coming the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Does the Kodesh Baruch Hu in fact get angry? And yeah, Kodesh Baruch Hu gets angry. The Tanya, we have a brayso that tells us ve'el zayim b'chol yom. Kodesh Baruch Hu gets angry every single day. V'kama zamay. How long is his anger? Rega. V'kama rega. And we want to know how long is it actually rega. So it's echa mechameshes ribu ushmanas alafim ushmaina meyos ushmaina b'shah. If you look on the side here in the Mishpat, it brings down a different girsa. It may take out the riboy, and then he basically says that you should be geras here shmanas alafim ushmaina meyos upeiches shemacham v'nekib psukei atera. So if it's actually the psukim of the Torah, then the shmanas alafim doesn't actually work. In the Chumash, we have 5,800 and I think 88 psukim. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the right number. How do we know that? We know that from, what do we know that from? We know from the Gemara Kedushin. Gemara Kedushin Lamed Aleph. The Gemara tells us there on the bottom. The Gemara tells us there that they counted out the psukim. It's not 100% clear. It's not 100% clear the psukim, because over there we have a pasuk. The pasuk tells us that in Parshas Yisro, so the more of this says, they will break down this pasuk into 3 psukim. Nevertheless, the more seems to say that there's 5,888 psukim. So if that's the case, that there's that many psukim, then that would be what a rega is over here. That we're trying to mechaven the two. How much is that in terms of seconds relative to a second? Right, so there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, right? Did I get that right? I think so. Right, 3,600 seconds in an hour, and 3,600,000 thousand seconds in an hour, right? So it's obviously less than a second, but it's longer than a millisecond. Good. So that's what, at least according to this understanding of how long a reg is, and that's how long HaKadosh Baruch Hu's anger is. No human being is able to figure out exactly when this rega is, except for Bilam Marasha. Bilam Marasha, he knew when, or how to figure out when the Rebbeinu Shalom was upset, as it says in pasuk. He knew the das of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the Gemara says that a great line appears in much places. Hashta das behemter le'aviyada das elin aviyada. He didn't even know his own animal, right? His animal was like walking along the side of the road, and he was hitting at the donkey again and again and again. And he doesn't even know the das of his donkey, but he knows the das of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the Gemara says that it's not a word that he knows the das of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Don't think he was such a special guy in that sense. We know Bilam was special, right? The Torah tells us in the end, as the Medrash says in the Sifra, right? The pasuk says in the Parshas of Brachot that v'lo come B'Yisrael navi oid k'Moshe. B'Yisrael lo come, ava b'umayis come. In the nations there was a big navi. Why? Otherwise it wouldn't be fair to the nations. They would say we would have been better had the Rebbeinu Shalom given us a navi like that, right? The same way the Gemara tells in the beginning of Avodah Zarah on Beis Gimel, the Gemara tells us that the Yom Shalom are going to complain. You didn't give us the opportunities. If we only had the opportunities that everyone else had, we would have, that the Jews have, then we would have also been great. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu is in the midst of Sukkah, right, and all of that. So the basic premise is Bilam Marash is a terrible guy, but he is given a certain level of closeness to the Rebbeinu Shalom that approximates Moshe Rabbeinu in order to be able to give the guy a standing chance. That said, we can't imagine that Bilam, no matter how close he was to the Rebbeinu Shalom, could know the Rebbeinu Shalom being upset. So the Gemara says no, he didn't. He knew when the Rebbeinu Shalom was upset, but not because he had such a close connection, as much as El Malamed he had a way, he had figured out a technical means of telling himself when the Rebbeinu Shalom was upset. And this is what the Navi is saying to the Jewish people. Remember what Balak Melech Moav tried to do. What does that mean? You should know, I did not get upset during the days when Bilam was trying to get me upset at you. Because if I had gotten upset, there would not have been related left of the Jewish people even a remnant. And this is what Bilam said to Balak. How can I be able to curse the Jewish people if HaKadosh Baruch is not allowing me to do it? If he's not getting upset, I can't do it. It teaches us in all that time that the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't get upset. As we will see, the Bilam had a way to mechaven when the Rebbeinu Shalom was upset. We will have to see that in a second of how he was able to determine. He had a technical way of figuring that out. Now, I should just point out that what do you call it? The Tosfos here says the top Tosfos is asking if I had gotten angry, the Jewish people wouldn't have survived. So Tosfos asks if we just proven that a rega is less than a second, it's a little more than a millisecond. What are you going to say during such a period of time? How could you give a curse? So Tosfos says Kalim. He just said one word, destroy them. Kalim doesn't take very long. It takes less than a second. So maybe that's what he'll be able to get done. Then Tosfos says the second answer. Inami right. So if he would just start the curse within the moment that HaKadosh Baruch was upset, then he would be able to, as it were, finish the curse even after the rega was already over, and it would still work. Right? It comes out here very fascinating. Right? It's brought down halacha. The Magen Avraham writes. The Magen Avraham writes in Archaim Kufiyah. The Magen Avraham says that a person, when it comes time to Zman Tefillah, right? This happens a lot of times by Mincha, right? If you're starting Mincha right next to Shkia, so the Magen Avraham says just say Avinenu. If you don't have enough time to finish the davening, then say Avinenu. The Aruch HaShulchan says no. We learn out from this Tosfos that you don't have to do that. That so long as you start during the right period of time, if you're starting davening before the Zman is over, so then even if it's Nimshach after the fact, it's still okay because it's counted as though from when it started. This is the word of the Aruch HaShulchan has very practical ramifications, which is why if you ever go to a shul, even if they don't know what they're doing, but if they started davening Mincha, someone for the Zman Shkia, let's say, and they continue going even after Shkia, now you know how to be mastic them. It's not a problem. They're able to rely on this Tosfos, which was, I mean, we say Meruah Mida, the Mida Tzedakah is from Mida Puranis, right? The Kadosh Baruch is much more generous than he is for good than he is for punishing for the bad. So for the bad, we say that it would be Mamshech Lizman. So even when it comes to something good, it will for sure be Mamshech Lizman, and we can rely on this Aruch HaShulchan as opposed to going with the Magen Avraham. Okay. I'm not sure 100% if the Magen Avraham is the halach and the Aruch HaShulchan is just coming to be mastic and do, vitalik chavschus. The fact that people, in fact, don't always, finish mincha before the Zman, or he mamish felt like it. From me reading it inside, it sounds like that he actually felt this is the pasha halacha. Okay. It is the Gemara. So the Gemara wants to understand, again, how long is his anger? How do we technically find it? The kama zamai. How long again is the anger? And Gemara says again, rega v'kam rega Rabbi Avina rega kemem. Rega is like the word rega. I would imagine that rega kememre either is the same as the amount of time that we saw before, or maybe it's a bit longer. I'm not 100% sure. If it is the Gemara, minolon the rega rasach. How do you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really gets angry only for a rega? Shenema ki rega ba'apechayim ritzoni. Right? It's like a rega in his anger. Another place where we see that HaKadosh Baruch gets angry only for a second, because we say chavi kimat rega ad yavar zam, hide for a rega until the zam passes, until his anger passes. So again, either one of these sources, these psukim, could be a source to explain that the Rebbeinu Shalom got angry for a second. Emas Rasak. When does the Rebbeinu Shalom get upset? Rabbi Bahanach Tlas Shoy Kamaisa in the beginning hours of the day. Yichiyur Kabarta the Tarnagola. When the crown of the rooster turns white, the koyach had kara, and he's standing on one foot. The Gemara says, "What? Kol shaita v'shaita nami koyahafi." The rooster is always standing on one foot like this. You see roosters; they stand on one foot, and I'm assuming that also means that sometimes their crest of their crowns sometimes turns white. The Gemara says, "Kol shaita is be shurki sumki, v'hi shaita les be shurki sumki." Normally, even if their crown is turning colors, turning whiter, it still has streaks of red. But this second, it turns completely white. I don't know if scientists agree with this or not, but that's something that we could look into separately. I should mention that Gemara Pei Gimel tells us also about Shurki Sumki. The Gemara there tells about blessed Reb Shimon when he wanted to do an operation for himself to see if he was in fact so close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Gemara says that, and he was killing people, without taking them through a whole Drishah Chakir process just because he had a feeling. So the Gemara says that he did an operation on himself, and he took out some fat and he put it out in the sun of Tammuz to see if it would become masriach. And the Gemara says, but if it's fat, it's not going to be masriach. The Gemara says over there, no, if it has shurki sumki, if it has the veins in it, the veins would to be masriach, they would become disgusting. Obviously, pure fat wouldn't do anything, but if it has shurki sumki, then it would. So the Gemara says that when he made the operation, it wasn't just pure fat; it was also stuff with veins, etc., and it nevertheless still didn't putrefy. Okay, finish the Gemara. A very interesting Gemara here in terms of pedagogical lessons of how to teach your kids and others. Hahut Stuki, the Havi B'Shavusa de Rabbi Shulban Levi. There was a Stuki that lived in the town of Rabbi Shulban Levi. Hava Komitzarle Tuva Bikroi. Used to get him big trouble with Rabbi Shulban Levi. He used to bug him a lot with psukim. In other words, this is a Stuki, right? Did we discuss this? I'm pretty sure that I just discussed this. Oh yeah, on Sunday mornings. For those who are here Sunday mornings, we've been discussing the proofs of the Torah Shabbat Peh. So we just did our last one. So we discussed various different disputes between the Tzdukim and the Prushim and other sects that existed at that time, right? So the Tzdukim, they took the Torah in a fashion that we would consider to be anti our Messiah, anti the rabbis. Why? Because they had a different Messiah, they had a different understanding of how to read Psukim. So this Sugi would go bother B'Shulban Levi about Psukim. He would challenge him. Why do we read this Pasuk that way? Why do we, we discussed on Sunday, Machas HaShabbos, Machas HaPesach, what does that mean? Yeah, sure, we discussed all that. So that's what would happen over here. He would bug him a lot on Psukim. So Yom Echad Shokal Tanagala, B'Shulban Levi had enough. So he took a rooster, then carried the arse, he put it between his legs, the iron bone. He decided he's going to look at this rooster all day. He said, I'm going to stay here all day until this moment happens when the rooster is standing on the one foot and the crest is turning white. So when that moment happened, he had fallen asleep. He was dozing. So Amar he said it's not normal to act like this. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, His mercy is on all of His creatures. That is to say, that the Rebbeinu Shalom has mercy even on the Tzdukim, so He shouldn't be less merciful than the Rebbeinu Shalom. And also, that's not great when a tzaddik is doing the punishing. Now, I should point out, especially that we have like a Gemara we're going to come to in a couple of days. The Gemara tells us on Yud Amud Aleph, on the top of the page, there were the B'yonim who were living on the block of Rameir, and they would bug him a lot. Now, what were the B'yonim? The Gemara is talking about B'yonim, but the Gemara is talking about B'yonim presumably after the fact, right? The B'yonim, they were the ones who were during around the Second Temple. The Gemara tells us in Gittin and Gimel and Dal and Hey about the B'yonim, that they were the ones who were causing all the fights. They wanted to fight against the Roman Empire, right? That's the whole Meiser. Birchim and Zaki had to go out and hiding. Okay? The B'yonim were making him crazy, right? So, and we're talking about Rameir. Rameir is long after Bekiva. It's after Beitar, after destruction of the second. But it's like long after. So what are the B'yonim doing then? I don't know. but there was somebody who was really irritating him. And in this case, Meir wanted to daven they should be dead, and his wife said it doesn't say that you're reading the pasuk wrong. It doesn't say Yitamu chaytem in haaretz. It says Yitamu chatoim in haaretz. Get rid of the chatoim, not the chaytem. So instead, he instead of davening for the person to die, he was boy rachme, and the person they should be chayzer b'tshuva. So in a similar sense over here, you have the tzduki. He's being mitzvah Rabbi Shimon Levi, and Rabbi Shimon Levi wants him to be dead, and then he changes his mind after he fell asleep. He realizes it's not the goal to kill this guy, but rather he doesn't say here to make him do tshuva, but rather he thinks it's just to let the guy be. If you look at Taisus here, Taisus says, I don't understand. What's the problem with trying to kill him? Don't we say that when it comes to the tzdukim, that maridim v'loy malin, right? The Gemara tells Avodah Zarah that you can mamish kill them, right? The maridim, you put them into the well, let them die, right? Or the mikvah punishment, the way they used to do it, for the maestrim, right? They would dunk the guy in the mikvah. It happens to be they gave him a lot of dunks, and somehow it didn't work for himself after all the tefillas. So the Gemara, so Tais is asking, if we say maridim v'loy malin, what's the problem with this tzduki? That why didn't Rabbi Shimon Levi want to get rid of him? And why is he taking it as a sign that, you're not supposed to do it? So Taisa says, we say Ma'am when we read it only in relation to human beings. Human beings have a job that they're allowed to have an opportunity to kill one of these people. That's fine. But only b'dei adam, and not b'dei shemayim. But b'dei shemayim, la v'arech ara, la hanisham, la tricham, la hargam, b'dei shemayim, shleik derech b'nei adam. But to matriach their banishment, did he ask their banishment to kill them? We have a head that we can kill them be they our base. We can be maridin, but to make their British not do it, no, we have no heter for that. That's Taisus' first answer. And Taisus says the second answer, maybe a different answer. Says Taisus, don't be gersa that it's a stuki. But if the gersa instead of a stuki is just a regular akum, a regular person who's every kechavim, then it would work better to call him a hasam, because the word there says in Avodah Zarah Chav Zayin that right, you don't kill them, you don't help them out of the well, but you don't put them in either. So then it will make sense that Rabbi Shimon Levi wasn't going to kill this person. Okay, continues the Gemara. So after Rabbi Shimon Levi tried this experiment, it didn't work, so he took it as a hint that he's not supposed to do it anymore. So the Gemara says the following: Tana Mishmei Rabbi Meir. So again, we just saw about Rabbi Meir on Yud and Aleph. But Rameir here says a different point. When the sun's shining in the morning, and all the kings of the east and west are all they're all putting on their crowns and getting up in the morning and bowing down, prostrating themselves before their various idols that they have. Baruch gets angry at that moment. So again, that would presumably be a different moment than the rega that we just said. Just a different time of the day when people are engaging in idol worship. Then is the Gemara. It's good to have a moment of reproach in your own heart. Than getting pesh. That's what I mean when I say a pedagogical Gemara. You could, as a technical matter, force good behavior from your kids. Right? If they're afraid of getting a frask or petch or however you call it, then they'll be engaged in good behavior. That's one way to obtain it. But as the Gemara says over here, unbelievable pedagogical idea, it's far better when it comes internally. That's why, on a tangential point, the theocracies like Iran are not sustainable. That's why they say something. I saw an article from an Iranian dissident who was saying that today the young people in Iran, under 20, under 30, the majority of them are not so religious. Why? It doesn't work. When you force it down from the government's throat, the government's forcing it down your throat, it doesn't work. It never is sustainable. If it comes from Me'elav, then it's sustainable. Or to use some Lubavitcher terminology, if it's a sarusa dilatata, then it works. But if it's always a sarusa dilaela, it doesn't work. You can't always force things from above. You gotta let people grow into their own. That's what the Gemara is saying over here. Better a moment of self-reproach in one person's heart than getting a lot of patch. Right? In the beginning of Aisha, the woman is running after all of her lovers. And she then says on her own, I'm going to return back to my initial husband, because that was when it was ideal for me. Right after going around and cavorting with all the other inappropriate places that she went, then she decides, you know what? I want to return back to the home of my youth, the husband of my youth, the way it ought to be. That tshuva, that is the ideal. Reish Lakish Amar Yesim Malkias. It's even better than getting 100. Malkish Shnemer Tachas Gar Mevin Mehakas Ksilmea. One like moment of remonstration, but somebody who understands is better than giving a fool 100 patch. A fool giving 100 patch, it doesn't do anything. Meaning you might get technical behavior approved, but it's not real. It's not innate. It's not a real change in the person. Moshe Rabbeinu asked for three things, and it was given to him. He asked for the Tishchana should be on the Klal Yisrael. It says in Pasuk that the Hakadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, right? After Moshe Rabbeinu asks that Haloi b'lechtecha imanu v'nafliu ani v'amcha mikol ha'ama she'openeu adama. Moshe Rabbeinu gets that. Hashem says, yes, I'm going to go along with the Jewish people. Please don't let the Shechina go on the rest of the nations. We asked that Hashem should teach him his ways. And he asked the Rebbeinu Shalom to teach him his ways, and Hashem says, "Okay, I'm going to find Rebbeinu Shalom. What is his ways? What is the Rebbeinu Shalom have as special ways that he wants to know about? What is it?" So the Gemara says, "I'm going to find Rebbeinu Shalom. Why is it that sometimes tzaddik can have it good and sometimes bad, and Russia is sometimes good and bad? Tzaddik, v'toivloi, tzaddik ben tzaddik, tzaddik v'raloi, tzaddik ben Rasha. It's because one is a tzaddik ben tzaddik and one is a tzaddik ben Rasha. Meaning, if he's a ben Rasha, he's going to sometimes have it bad. If he's a ben tzaddik, he'll have it good. Rasha v'toivloi. You want to know why it's a Rasha? Sometimes he has it good because he's a Rasha ben tzaddik. Rasha v'raloi, Rasha ben Rasha. The same thing also by a Rasha. Now the Gemara wants to explore this a little bit more. Amar Mar says the more tzaddik v'toivloi, tzaddik ben tzaddik, tzaddik v'raloi, tzaddik ben Rasha. Is that really true that every time it's a tzaddik ben tzaddik he has a great life, and tzaddik ben Rasha he could have bad? We already mentioned this Gemara before. Well, yeah, it seems a steer in Psukim. On the one hand, it says Hashem is going to remember the sins of the Avos on the children. On the other hand, it says Hashem is not going to punish the children for the sins of the fathers. We should make a steer in these psukim, and for the Gemara Mishanin like kasha. It's not a question, you know. It depends if they are doing the deeds of their fathers. It depends if they're not doing the deeds of the fathers. So what is the Gemara answering here? The Gemara is answering that when Hashem is going to punish the children, if they're doing, when Hashem is going to punish the children when they, if the children, for example, if you have a tzaddik ben Rasha, is he going to get punished? No, he's not being eiches and maasev v'seim yadayim. But if he's a Rasha ben tzaddik, so then he's not being eiches with the deeds of his fathers, then he will get punished. So the whole vort then becomes that when is Hashem going to punish the children? If they're not acting well. Hashem is not going to punish the children if they're acting well. So if that's the case, then if somebody who is a tzaddik ben Rasha, he should have it always good. If he's not being eiches maasev v'seim yadayim. So what are you saying that a tzaddik v'raloi is the reason that he will have bad? It can't be. So this rejects the answer that we gave before. So we have to give you a new answer. It's the difference between really a tzaddik gomer versus just a regular tzaddik. A tzaddik gomer is not going to have bad, but a tzaddik she'enai gomer, he could have bad. And the same way by a Rasha v'toivlei, Rasha she'enai gomer, Rasha v'raloi, Rasha gomer. Again, the same is going to be true by a Rasha. If it's a Rasha gomer, then he will have bad. If it's a Rasha she'enai gomer, then he could have good. This is a dispute with Rabbi Meir. It's a dispute with Rabbi Meir because Rabbi Meir said that only two things he was given. In other words, the traveling with the Jewish people and not traveling with the non-Jews. In other words, for Rabbi Meir is saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to reside with whomever I want to reside. Even if they're not worthy, I can still reside with them. I'm going to have mercy even on people who are not deserving of mercy. So it's not a vort here about tzaddik braloi or tzaddik gomer. No, Hashem says, I can take an absolute Russia, and sometimes I'm going to help him out. I can take an absolute tzaddik, and sometimes Chas Shalom hurt him as well. Nothing to do with tzaddik Gomer, nothing to do with tzaddik ben tzaddik. Good. Next Gemara, just quickly finish up. Says the Gemara, "Vayom lesucha l'reises panoi." Now Hashem said, "You're not able to see my face." Moshe Rabbeinu, Tanosh Shmei Rav Shimon Karcha, Kach Amalei Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe, Kishiratzisi LeRatzisa. At the sneh, when I wanted you to see me, you didn't want to see me. Right? I asked the Moshe Panav from Ne'elikim. Now you want to see me. You're saying, you're saying, I want to see you. And he writes, I don't want to show you. This is a dispute of Shimon Nachmani and Rabbi Yonasan. Because he says, no, in the zchus of the three that Moshe Rabbeinu did in Parshas Shmos, he was zeichet to the three that we see in Parshas Kisisa. B'schav v'yashtem Moshe panav zachal klasta panim. And the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu hit his face from the Rebbeinu Shalom was zachal to the cluster panim. The pasuk says that he didn't current our Moshe, right? Our Pnei Moshe, his face shown. B'schav kiyari, this chad that he had to fearful to look at the Rebbeinu Shalom zachal vayu migesh seilav. The Jewish people were afraid to come near him. He had to wear a mask. He had to put a mask on his face. B'schav mehabed, the schar that he had from not looking at the Rebbeinu Shalom zachal the pasuk passes by that he was able to see, as it were, with the image of God, whatever that means. Vasirosi is copy. Vari says Hashem says you're able to see my back, but not my front. Again, whatever that means. Like we already discussed in Vav Manal, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wore his tefillin, so they show him the back of his tefillin, whatever that means. Every word that comes up from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even out tonight is not chayzer. Right? This reminds me of the more Makas Yudalef, that Kilas Chacham and Fil out tonight is not going to be still a problem. So the same idea. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever he says, even out tonight, it's still going to come out. Hashem says, the Moshe Rabbeinu, let's get rid of the Jewish people. I'm going to make you a great nation. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu ended up davening for the Jewish people, the milso, but I forgot the Moshe Rachme the milso butla, and Moshe Rabbeinu got the whole gzer butla. Fil hachi okum mizar. Nevertheless, his children still became great. Shnei bnei Moshe Gershom ben Eliezer. You ben Eliezer Rachavia harosh. Bnei Rachavia Rav Lamala. Utani Rav Yosef Lamala Meshishim Riba. His son Eliezer had his son Rachavia, who became an unbelievable huge nation in his own right. Lamala Meshishim Riba asked Rabbi Ravik Siv Hacha Rav Lamala Siv Hasam bnei Yisrael Par Veishu to Vayirbu. So you connected Vayirbu to Ravia, so it became a great amount of people. Have a wonderful day.